You probably never heard of a bail fund or really do much work with district court clerks, but BLM and bail funds, I learned all about it. And this lady, Reverend Sherry Dickerson in Oklahoma City, who's head of BLM there, who is now accused of wire fraud and money laundering. And it goes back to these nonprofits again, but this time it's about helping pay bail. Again, I didn't even know about this stuff until I did my research on this, but a bail fund is basically this huge pool of money that's collected for the purpose of giving bail to those who are either in jail or awaiting trial. And it turns out that actually behind the scenes of BLM, this is where a lot of the money went. So I wanted to check this out and see who this lady, Reverend Sherry Dickerson, was, how she got there, and what happened with this fraud and money laundering scheme. Because if you just take yourself back to like 2020, 2021 era, $50 billion were promised by corporate America alone to BLM and similar causes after George Floyd. So it turns out that this lady, Reverend Sherry Dickerson, she's a longtime social justice activist in Oklahoma City, reproductive freedoms, BLM. Here she is in her, Reverend stuff, LGBTQ issues. She was interviewed before all the fraud. She said that she's an activist first. Here she is running for the city council of Oklahoma City. And she definitely has the whole vibe, she says this whole thing about July 4th, I'm grateful to be in America, but sometimes the pride of being an American I hope to feel is lackluster. And then she becomes executive director of BLM OKC. And one thing that I found out that was really interesting about the way that all this stuff works behind the scenes is that BLM OKC itself was not a nonprofit. It is not a registered tax-exempt organization. So there's this other thing called a fiscal sponsor. So basically what I gather is they are the actual nonprofit and they let other child organizations be the nonprofit, but underneath them. So that's what BLM OKC was. They were this child nonprofit. So that means Reverend Sherry Dickerson doesn't have to actually run a nonprofit. Instead, she teams up with this Alliance for Global Justice based in Arizona, and they serve as this fiscal sponsor to BLM OKC. This is this Alliance for Global Justice, and when I was researching them, they get involved in all sorts of the leftist left stuff. You can go check them out if you want. And the Alliance for Global Justice, if you want to go look them up, they've actually gotten into a bunch of trouble because some of the organizations that they fiscally sponsor have even gotten involved in terrorism stuff. But anyway, it's kind of a crazy arrangement because that means that of the money that BLM OKC raises, they have to give a fee, usually between 6 and 15% up to this Alliance for Global Justice. So they basically take a management fee on any of the money that BLM OKC raises, and then she doesn't have to actually run a nonprofit. But that does mean that the Alliance for Global Justice is supposed to make sure that BLM OKC is in accordance with IRS regulations, basically meaning that Reverend Sherry Dickerson spends the money in ways that are consistent with basically the law. And of course, the pivotal moment in this story is back in 2020 with George Floyd. If you've seen a lot of my other reporting, 2020 was just a time when a flood of Democrat money hit all sorts of nonprofits through both COVID and now through George Floyd stuff. So in late spring 2020, BLM OKC raises more than $5.5 million. And a lot of it came from, for example, this Minnesota Freedom Fund. They raised $40 million in just a short while. And then they spent about half of it on posting bail. These bail funds. And they passed some of those millions down to BLM OKC, which is under the control of Reverend Sherry Dickerson. Well, she filed 2 false annual reports to her fiscal sponsor, the Alliance for Global Justice, which she needed to do because she was sending herself $80,000, $30,000, more than $120,000, all to her PayPal account. And then what she would do is take the checks that were coming back from the bail fund and she would put them in her own account. She bought a new car. She funded trips for herself and her associates to the Dominican Republic and Jamaica. She was at Nordstrom, Amazon, furniture outlets, $50,000 on DoorDash. She bought herself 7 properties, while at the same time she was literally taking media engagement saying that she's raising the money to bail out BLM protesters. And I think it's helpful to remember that at this time, the country was in this haze of Democrat urgency about these issues, money just flooding from every sector, the government, corporations, urgency for Black Lives Matter. This was in the New Yorker. The NFL committed $250 million, $250 million. And corporate America totals $50 billion for George Floyd related stuff. And I mean, that is just a huge pipe of money. And a lot of that money that ended up under the control of Reverend Tasheri Jackson in Oklahoma City was paying for her properties, her car, her PayPal account, and trips to Jamaica.